Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today what I want to do is part 2 of how to use your dress form to create a wrap top pattern design. In part 1 I showed you how to prep the dress form to get it ready to drape half of the wrap top. Today we're actually going to drape that piece, and I'm super excited about this because I think I mentioned this in the first video, that a wrap top is very hard for me to just buy off the rack at a store because I have a large bust and it never seems to fit right. So I'm super appreciative of my DittoForm that has a very similar shape to mine. The measurements are very similar. So I'll be able to drape the fabric on and get a really good idea of how it's going to fit me as I'm working. So the first thing I want to do is let's look at the fabric that I have prepped. You'll see here I drew two lines, a vertical line and a horizontal line. So the vertical line is going to be our center front. Normally when I drape on a dress form, I put a folded edge along the center front, but because this style extends past the center, I need some room on the other side to finish the piece. So I drew my line 6 inches from the edge, or maybe 5 inches. And then the other thing I started to draw here, I didn't go all the way across because I'm not going to need it over here, but you have to have a horizontal balance line, and I'm going to line up this horizontal balance line at the apex of my bust. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this fabric and I'm going to pin it so that horizontal guideline is up near my apex and the vertical line is running along my center front edge. And I'm using this lightweight cotton because I can see through it, so I can see my black tape. So I'm just going to pin it there, and I'm going to pin it down at my empire waist right here. All right, so then I'm going to pin across to my apex, and the goal is you want to have a straight, a horizontal guideline that's parallel with the floor when you get started here. And again, I'm just going to pin it right through the apex where my princess seam line is, like that. Okay. Then I'm going to immediately get rid of some fabric. The style line for this, let me just remind everybody, is going to be running along here. Okay, so I don't need to have a lot of fabric up around the neck. So my first step, let me just put this back. All right, so my first step is going to be to get rid of a bunch of this fabric just so it's not annoying to work with. And I do want to be careful that I don't, lop off fabric I'm going to need. So I'm just going to take a piece of it off there. Okay, and I know I'm not going to need much of any of the fabric up here, but I'm just going to leave that there for a minute. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just put a few clips so it'll lay against the neck here. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin my horizontal balance line all the way to the side seam. So I'm just going to tack it up there. So see, what I've done now is I've created a, the fabric is straight along the horizontal grain line across the bust, and it's straight along my center front edge as well. And actually, when I'm working on the lower part of this, I can sit down so I can see what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to stick a pin right at the top of the side seam, and I'm going to put another pin at the side seam where the empire waistline is marked. Okay, so that's how it's looking so far. You don't want to smooth your fabric and pull it tight against your dress form because you don't want your garment to fit that way either. So I'm just have it smooth nice and, just enough so it fits but not so snug that I'm creating sort of a scuba suit here. Okay, so now you can see I have all of this fabric up in here, and this is how we're going to create and fit this side without creating a bust dart. I do not want a bust dart in this pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some of this fabric I don't need. Again, so basically I'm going to cut around my armhole like this, but I don't want to cut a lot of this off yet because it's going to swing towards the center. So see, what I did was I just cut some off like that, and then that's going to allow me to smooth the fabric over the bust this way. So I'm smoothing it towards center front like this. And as I do that, I can pin out the shape of the armhole. So, and I don't know if you can see on camera the black tape through this lightweight cotton, but I'm just going to pin along there. And up over the shoulder. And I'm just going to be really, I'm not going to, smooth the daylights out of it. So I'm stretching it. I just want to get it so it fits against the dress form nice and smoothly. So I'm going to pin both sides of the shoulder. I have a 1.5 inch shoulder seam here. Okay, so that's how it looks now. Not very impressive, but you can see here I have all of this extra fabric all pushed because it's pinned straight here, and I pushed the fabric this way. Okay, so that's where all the fabric's hanging out now. So to make it easier to see what we're working with, I'm literally going to lop off a big chunk of this now. Now that I see where my shoulder is, I can take out some of this fabric. And I really don't need all of this fabric either. All right, so see, I got rid of some of that fabric. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this fabric fall down so I can smooth the top part of the wrap bodice. And again, I'm going to cut pretty close to my tape just so I can see what I'm doing. All right, so see, as I get rid of some of the fabric, I can get that to lay nice and smooth. Okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do, before I worry about all of this extra fabric that's going on here, I'm actually going to pin my darts underneath the bust. And I'm going to make two. So I'm going to make one there, and I'm going to make one here. I don't want to make it tight, but I want to make it fitted. So I'm going to create I'm going to create two darts here. And I'm not going to worry about pinning them all the way up yet. I'm just going to do it at the edge here. And then I'm going to pin all the way across so I can get that overlapped, or the part that laps over settled over here. All right, so now I've got this giant dart of fabric to work with. And some of that fabric in this dart, I'm going to take out with a technique called contouring. When you create an open neckline like this that's open and overlapping, what you need to do sometimes is a technique called contouring. And what that means is we're actually taking out fabric along this edge that would gape away if you left it there and you put the garment on. So I'm going to make one little 1/4 inch dart right there. Okay, and then this, I'm going to unpin my center now, and I'm going to rock this down a little bit farther. I think what I'm going to do is, well, actually right here, I'm going to create a dart right here. And to get this to lay nicer, I'm also going to, let me cut some of this extra fabric away. Draping is a series of starting with fabric that's too big and then trimming it away so you can see what your shape is. So I'm going to trim this even closer. Okay. All right, so you can see now it's starting to actually make a shape. Okay, so I'm going to have this nice and smooth. Right here there is a dart, and I'm going to pin this dart in to the apex, and what I'm going to do when I get it on paper is rotate it to the hem edge or the lower edge where the empire waist is. So for now I'm just going to create the dart there. Okay, so there's one dart. All right, and we're not going to have that in our final design, but you can see how that kind of smooths that out. So the first step was to smooth it towards the center front. I trimmed fabric away. I pinned the bottom edge of the the piece to, be where the empire waist is, and then I created this dart right here. It looks like it would fit fine, but I know from experience that we're going to need to take out a little bit of this. So I'm going to actually create a little 1/4-inch dart right here. Okay, and that's going to help snug the edge up, and I'll show you how to do this right here. This is where we're going to contour the edge. But I think for the most part now I'm happy with this shape. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a pen, and I'm using one of those friction pens, the ones that erase, and I'm just going to mark all along my tape that I can see through. Because then when we get it off the dress form, I'm going to trim it on that line, and then I can create a paper pattern piece, add seam allowances, and then we can sew it together and sew the darts and see how it fits. So for now I'm just going to mark my lines on my fabric. Okay, so see how I marked the whole neckline edge there. Now I'm going to mark along the bottom edge where my empire waist is. Okay. Oops. And then I'm going to mark my side seam, and then I'm also going to mark my armhole and my shoulder seam. All right, so that's how it looks. I have everything marked, all my edges. I'm going to take it off and we're going to work with it on the table. I'll show you what the next steps are. Let me just show you, when you take your fabric off the dress form, the other thing you have to mark before you take the pins out is where your darts are. So I'm just going to draw on either side where the pin is, like this. And then this dart right here. And then this little contouring dart right there. All right, so now I can take my pins out and stretch it out so you can see what it looks like. All right, so here's what it looks like laying flat. Okay, so the next step is to true up all your lines and draw in all your darts. And I'll use like one of my curved rulers, you know, and I'll just follow along and, you know, darken my lines so I can see, you know, what my shape is, something like this. And it's interesting to me, when it was on the dress form, it looked like it was forming a straight line, a straight diagonal line going across the front, but you can see here, it really is not a straight line, it's more of a curved line, and what this is doing, it's creating room for the bust underneath. So it's always interesting to me to look at something flat, you know, after it's been fitted onto my dress form, because you can definitely see some of the shaping from the outer edges of the piece. You know, so here we have, you know, so we just finished this up. I would darken all of this in, and then I would draw all my darts in. And just to show you what I ended up with, I already did that, and I just want to show you here. All right, so the first thing I did was I drew a 3-inch dart here, because that's approximately how much I thought I needed to take in. So that was my first step. So let me just highlight that in pink. Okay, so I just did this. The next thing I did was I connected the big dart I took out in the center front, and I just lined it right up with the tip of this small dart here. Okay. Then I drew in my second dart, and I just made it hit the leg of this long dart. Okay, so see how all these darts are now connected? And the same thing with this contouring dart. And I did not take this dart out, I just left that dart for now, but I have it there as a reference, because what I want to do is I want to see how it fits by sewing in these darts, and then if I need to, I can work with this contouring dart, because that way, you know, I can just take it step by step. I've learned a long time ago, like, you drape something on one time, true it up, sew it, and then put it back on, and there's always a little fiddling to do. So I'm going to leave this little skinny dart off for now, and I'm going to deal with these, you know, major ones. Okay, here's my pattern piece. But basically what I did was I traced it, and then I closed the darts on the paper. So this line right here in pink, okay, this is a closed dart. Basically what I did was, let's look at this. I cut this dart out completely, and then I cut one of these dart legs each so they could open. So when I closed this dart, these popped open a little bit. So you can see that right here, this pink right here, this is what opened when I shut this dart, because they were both connected to the opening. All right, so this big dart transferred to these little additions under here. Again, the jury is still out about this contouring dart, if I'm going to need it or not. Okay, so here's my piece I cut out to test, and I sewed the darts that are here. Okay, and notice there's no dart here now because I closed it. So what we're going to do now is let's put it back on the dress form and see how it fits. Now this is going to overlap onto my tape because I added seam allowances. So it's going to be a little bit wider than the design tape. All right, so you can see from the side that fits really nicely, but this is what I was hoping to show you guys. The darts fit nice under here, but see, I've got this extra fabric So even though I took it out with that big dart when I draped it the first time, I still have extra here. And part of that is from the fact that this is cut not exactly on the bias, but it's a diagonal cut across the fabric. So after you cut that fabric and pull it, it starts to stretch. So if you cut this garment out and put it on, as you put it over your head, you would stretch this edge. So this fabric right here still needs to be taken out. So what I'm going to do is create, I think I'm going to create two, one up here and then one over here. Just little 1/4 inch darts. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to take up that extra that was flopping around. All right, and then once we deal with that, I think that'll be a nice fit, and I think it'll lay nicely against me. So now I can show you how to do that on here, which is very similar to how I shut this and I added it down here. So now you'll be able to see the exact steps to do that, because I'm going to show you how to create these contouring darts and get rid of them, and I'm going to pop them into these two little darts down here. So let me just use a different color. All right, so I'm going to do one where it's one where I drew it here. Okay, so a little 1/4 inch dart there. And then I think I'll do the other one a little bit lower, like this. Okay, so see, now I have these two new darts. We want to get rid of that fabric. That's what this is up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, the first step is, I'm just going to cut these out. And actually, I could probably just cut one leg. I don't need to cut out both legs. I can just cut one leg there. Then you can see I can't really shut them and have the pattern lay flat, so I have to have an out. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up this dart again. Okay. And as I shut these, okay, so let me just shut this one first. Okay, and then I'll just shut this one. You can see what happened is my dart popped open. Okay. All right, so now this dart is a little bit bigger, and you may be wondering why I had two darts that were a very similar amount on the edge. See how this is barely a 1/2 inch over here? And I had two of them here. The reason why this opening is smaller is because the distance between the point and where the edge of the fabric is shorter than here. The longer your dart is, the more it would open. So if this were a top and it went all the way down to a hem, it'd be open probably 1.5 inches to maybe even 2 inches if it was extended down to the full length of an actual top. So that's why it doesn't make a huge change to my pattern here, which is why it's perfect to take that extra along this edge, shut these darts, and let it open down here. So just to recap my process, that's what I did when I closed that big dart that I made when I was draping and opened it up into both. So, you know, so if that's not clear, please let me know and I will help you, you know, I'll answer your questions. But that's how you fix that. I'm just going to take a scrap of paper and tape this down. And you can see after I tape it, it really didn't add very much here. Okay, so now I've got these two darts. I'm going to use a big Sharpie marker so you can see the final size of the dart. So we have to include the part we just added. So there's one dart, and then this was the other dart that I haven't changed. Okay, so those are my darts, and I got rid of all of that extra right there. So I am going to try this again, and I'm going to sew it up into a complete front. And maybe I'll even add the other pieces for next week so you can see what it looks like in a top. But that's how you drape your, just your single side wrap top. How you create the pattern piece. First, draw your darts. Okay. Trace it onto paper. Close your darts. So this dart was closed. It made these two darts pop open a little bit bigger, where the pink is. Then I tried it again and then added that contouring, which will take up the stretch along the bias of that diagonal style line of that wrap neckline. So now I do have to test it again. Like, I'm not going to cut it out of good fabric yet, but I think we're going to be really close. So join me next week when I show you the completed top, and I'll go over any other changes I had to make. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, please post them and I will help you. All right, so have a great day, and I will see you next week.